Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the concepts of time.
Time.
Specifically, what now actually means.
Okay.
We'll be exploring a lecture titled Tu il tempo presente non esiste,
Right.
which translates to the present time does not exist. I know it's a bold statement, so get ready, because this might just change how you think about reality.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever stopped to consider what the present actually is? I mean, really think about it.
It's a question that has challenged thinkers for ages.
Right.
We often think of time as a straight line,
Yeah.
past, present, future, right? But this lecture presents a different way of looking at it.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
What's this new perspective all about?
It suggests that instead of these three distinct parts, we should consider time as time utilized
Okay.
and time not yet utilized.
Interesting.
Think of it like a book.
Okay.
Time utilized is the part you've already read,
Mm-hmm.
and time not yet utilized is the rest of the story waiting for you.
So where does the present moment fit into all of this?
That's where things get really interesting.
Okay.
The lecture argues that the present moment, the now, as we experience it, is actually an illusion.
Wait, hold on. How can now be an illusion?
Well, everything we experience, sights, sounds, touch, is delayed by the speed of light.
Hmm.
Even something as simple as two people shaking hands isn't truly happening in the exact same instant.
You're saying that even physical contact isn't really now.
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around that.
Think of it this way. Imagine you're watching a live sporting event on TV.
Okay.
There's always the tiny delay between the action on the field and when you see it on your screen.
Right.
Right. It's the same with our perception of reality, just on a much smaller scale.
So are you saying we're always living a fraction of a second in the past?
Yeah.
It's kind of creepy when you think about it.
It is a bit unsettling, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it also has some fascinating implications for how we understand the flow of time and the concept of a predetermined future.
Okay, now you've got me hooked. What does this have to do with the future being predetermined?
Well, if everything we perceive is slightly delayed, it strengthens the argument for determinism.
Okay.
The idea that the past completely determines the future.
I've heard that term before, but I'm not sure I fully grasp it.
Imagine you're trying to predict the outcome of a business decision.
Okay.
If you knew every single factor influencing that decision, market trends, competitor actions, consumer behavior, even down to the personalities and biases of the people involved,
Right.
wouldn't the outcome feel almost inevitable, like it was destined to happen all along?
I see what you mean.
Yes.
If we knew absolutely everything, there wouldn't be any surprises, right? But how does that relate to the illusion of now?
If the present is always a tiny bit behind, it implies that the future might already be set in motion, like a chain of dominoes falling one after another.
So this tiny delay in our perception connects to the idea that our future might already be written. That's a pretty big leap.
It is, and the lecture doesn't stop there.
Oh.
It introduces another element that could change everything: consciousness.
Consciousness, how does that fit into all of this?
The lecture suggests that consciousness isn't just a product of evolution.
Oh.
It actually exists outside of the physical world, or what they call the existed world.
Existed world. Can you explain that a little more? I'm not sure I follow.
Think of it like software running on a computer.
Okay.
The software can do things, make calculations, even control the hardware in ways that the hardware itself wasn't specifically designed to do.
Right.
The software operates on a different level.
Okay, so consciousness is like the software and the physical world is like the hardware.
Exactly.
I can see that.
The lecture argues that consciousness operates on a separate level,
Okay.
beyond the physical laws that govern the existed world.
All right, I'm on the edge of my seat. Tell me more.
What's fascinating is that if consciousness operates beyond the existed world, it might be the key to breaking free from this idea of a predetermined future.
Okay, I'm following you so far, but wouldn't that mean our choices could actually change what happens? Even though the present is always lagging behind?
Exactly. It introduces this element of unpredictability,
Right.
of free will that wouldn't exist in a purely deterministic system.
But if that's true, how can something outside the physical world actually have an impact on, well, reality?
Think back to the computer analogy.
Yeah, okay.
The software, even though it's intangible, can still control the hardware.
Right.
It can make the computer do things it wouldn't do on its own.
I get that, but what would be the real world equivalent of that?
Well, let's consider human history.
Okay.
We've accomplished incredible things.
Yeah.
Like developing complex languages, building cities, even traveling to space.
Right.
None of those things were inevitable based solely on the laws of physics.
So you're saying those achievements are evidence of consciousness at work?
Exactly. These are all examples of how human ingenuity,
Yeah.
driven by consciousness,
Yep.
has shaped the world in ways that go beyond what we might expect from a purely physical deterministic system.
But couldn't you argue that those achievements are still products of our evolved brains? How do we know consciousness itself is operating outside the system, so to speak?
It's a valid question,
Yeah.
and the lecture acknowledges that there's still much we don't understand about consciousness.
Right.
But if we entertain the possibility that it exists beyond the existed world, it opens up a whole new way of thinking about our potential and the power of our choices.
Okay, so instead of being passive passengers on this predetermined timeline, we're actually active participants shaping the future with our choices. That's a pretty empowering thought.
It is, and it also raises some really intriguing questions about the nature of time itself.
Such as, I'm all ears.
Well, if consciousness isn't bound by the linear flow of time,
Okay.
as this lecture suggests,
Mm-hmm.
it might be possible for our choices to not only shape the future, but also influence the past.
Wait, back up a second. Influence the past. How is that even conceivable?
It's a mind-bending concept, I know. But if consciousness exists outside of the existed world, it might not be subject to the same limitations of time and causality that govern the physical universe.
So you're saying that our choices in the present could potentially influence events that have already happened? But wouldn't that create paradoxes? How does this idea of backward causality reconcile with our understanding of cause and effect?
Those are excellent questions, and honestly, there are no easy answers.
Right.
The lecture itself doesn't delve too deeply into the mechanics of backward causality,
Okay.
but it certainly opens up that possibility.
If we entertain that idea for a moment, it really makes you rethink everything you thought you knew about time.
Exactly. It challenges our assumptions about the fixed nature of the past
Yeah.
and suggests that maybe, just maybe, time is more fluid and interconnected than we realize.
This is a lot to digest, but I have to admit it's also incredibly exciting. It's like, if we really have this power to shape not just the future, but also the past, it means we're not just passive observers in this grand cosmic drama. We're active participants, co-creators of our own reality.
That's a powerful way to put it, and it aligns with what the lecture is hinting at.
Right.
If consciousness allows us to operate outside the existed world,
Yeah.
it suggests that we have a much greater role in shaping reality than we might have imagined.
This deep dive has certainly given me a lot to think
Me
about.
too. It's humbling and exhilarating all at the same time.
It makes you realize just how much we still don't know about ourselves and the universe we inhabit, but also the possibilities seem endless.
Absolutely. And I think this is a good place to pause and let all of this sink in a bit.
Agreed. We've covered a lot of ground, and these are big ideas to grapple with. All right, ready to jump back into the deep end?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
So this whole conversation about consciousness existing outside of the existed world has got me thinking, if our choices can ripple back in time, doesn't that imply a huge responsibility for every decision we make?
It certainly makes you pause and consider the weight of your choices, doesn't it?
Hmm.
If we're not just shaping the future, but potentially influencing the past as well, even seemingly small decisions could have unforeseen consequences.
You know, it's like when you're playing a video game and make a choice that unlocks a secret level.
Right.
Suddenly the entire game feels different.
Yeah.
It's like your present choice has retroactively changed the game's past.
That's a great analogy. It highlights how our actions in the present can reveal or alter aspects of the past that were previously hidden.
Exactly. And if that applies to real life, it makes you wonder about the nature of free will. If our choices can influence the past, does that mean we were always destined to make those choices? Or are we truly free to choose our own path?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? The lecture doesn't provide a definitive answer, but it suggests that the relationship between consciousness, time, and free will is far more complex than we might initially think.
It's almost like we're caught in this paradox. The present is an illusion because of the speed of light delay, but our consciousness might exist outside of those limitations.
The mind-boggling concept for sure. But perhaps the key takeaway is that our understanding of time is limited by our human perspective. Maybe time isn't a rigid linear progression as we perceive it, but something more fluid and interconnected.
So we're left with more questions than answers.
In a way, yes. But I think that's the beauty of exploring these kinds of ideas. They challenge us to think critically, to question our assumptions, and to remain open to new possibilities.
I have to say, as much as this deep dive has challenged my understanding of reality, it's also given me a sense of awe and wonder.
I understand what you mean. It's humbling to realize how much we still don't know, But it's also incredibly exciting to consider the vast potential of consciousness and its role in shaping our reality.
It makes you want to pay more attention to the present moment, knowing that it's not just a fleeting illusion, but potentially a point of infinite possibility.
Absolutely. And maybe that's the most important takeaway from all of this. If consciousness exists outside of the existed world, then each moment holds the potential for us to break free from limitations and create something truly extraordinary.
Well, on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive for today. It's been quite a journey exploring the illusion of now the concept of determinism and the mind-blowing implications of consciousness existing outside of the physical world.
It certainly has. And hopefully it's left our listeners with a renewed sense of wonder and curiosity about the nature of time consciousness and their own place in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and remember the present moment, however fleeting it may seem, might just hold the key to unlocking a world of infinite possibilities.